Welcome to The Explainer. Let's just jump right in. Today we're unpacking the fascinating and honestly sometimes intimidating mechanics of how educational institutions actually measure student success. Now we've all been through schooling, right? We've all sat there taking exams. But the machinery behind how those scores are designed, collected, and then used to shape our futures, that is a complex science all on its own.
So, have you ever wondered what the exact difference is between a test, a measurement, and an evaluation? We throw these words around interchangeably all the time in our daily lives. But for teachers, administrators, and policymakers, they have very distinct, almost surgical meanings that literally shape a student's entire learning journey, all the way from kindergarten up to university.
To untangle all this jargon, here is our map for today. We'll cover core concepts, measurement versus evaluation, different test types, standardized tests, and wrap up with recent trends.
All right, Section 1, Core Concepts in Assessment.
Let's start by laying down the fundamental building blocks. It is absolutely crucial to ground our explainer in real-world educational standards. So, we're looking at frameworks used to train future educators, specifically drawing on materials from the College of Education at the Iloilo State University of Fishery Science and Technology in the Philippines. This gives us a really authentic window into how teachers are actively taught to build and interpret the assessments we take.
Think of this as the exact life cycle of a grade. Step 1 is testing, simply administering the instrument to gather information. Then step 2 is measurement, where we actually quantify that learning into a hard number. Step 3 is assessment, which is the broader collection of this evidence. And finally, step 4 is evaluation, where the teacher actually makes an informed instructional decision based on all that data. It's a continuous, incredibly logical progression.
Moving on to Section 2, measurement versus evaluation and comparing those terms.
Now, let's pit two frequently confused terms against one another. Measurement is the process of assigning numerical values to a learner's performance. It answers a very specific question: how much has the student learned? According to educational researchers Nitko and Brookhart, measurement is all about objective, quantitative data. It doesn't judge, it just counts. It's the strict mathematical foundation that all further assessment is built upon.
To make this incredibly concrete, let's look at a classroom example. Say a teacher administers a 30-item quiz. A student named Maria takes it and scores a 27 out of 30. That specific score, the number 27 written in red ink at the top of the paper, is the measurement. It purely quantifies her learning without assigning any emotional or academic judgment to it at all.
Evaluation, on the other hand, is a completely different beast. It's the process of making judgments about the quality, effectiveness, or value of student learning. It answers the much deeper question: how well did the learner perform? This is where the teacher steps back, looks at the evidence, like Maria's 27, and makes a decision based on the extent to which the actual instructional objectives were achieved.
Let's put them side by side so you can really see it. On the left, we have measurement. John scored 42 out of 50. Just a raw fact. On the right, we have evaluation. John demonstrated satisfactory mastery and is ready for the next lesson. See the difference? The left is just a raw number, while the right is the teacher applying value, interpreting the data, and deciding what actually happens next for John's education.
Section 3, different test types and understanding the tools.
Now that we know how teachers evaluate, let's look at the specific tools they use. Notice how a teacher's tool completely changes depending on where they are in the instructional journey. A placement test happens before instruction to see if you're ready. A diagnostic test pinpoints exact weaknesses so a teacher knows exactly what to focus on. Formative tests, like quick pop quizzes, happen during the lesson to improve learning on the fly. And finally, summative tests, like big finals, happen after to measure overall achievement. When interpreting those scores, teachers use two distinct lenses. The first is the norm reference test, which compares a student against other students. Think of it like grading on a curve, or being in the top 10% in your class. The second is the criterion reference test. This compares your performance against a strict, predetermined baseline standard. For instance, requiring a 75% to pass, regardless of how anyone else in the room did.
Which brings us to Section 4, standardized testing and high-stakes contexts.
So what happens when we scale these classroom tools up to the national or even international level? Well, standardized tests, like the National Achievement Test or NAT in the Philippines, ensure that every single examinee across the country experiences uniform procedures. The instructions are the same, the timing is the same, and the scoring is the same. This provides massive, highly reliable data sets that governments use to measure school effectiveness and create broad educational policies.
And you're likely familiar with these global heavyweights. These acronyms virtually dictate the global education landscape. The SAT and ACT measure college readiness. The TOEFL evaluates English proficiency worldwide. And PISA is a really fascinating one. Conducted every 3 years, it measures the knowledge and skills of 15-year-old students globally, specifically focusing on critical thinking and real-life application across completely different countries.
While these tests offer incredibly valuable benchmarking, authoritative bodies like the American Psychological Association stress that they must demonstrate validity, reliability, and above all, fairness. The data they provide is powerful, right? So the scientific community really stresses that these results have to be interpreted ethically and fairly across very diverse student populations.
Often, standardized tests overlap with what we call high-stakes assessments. When a test's result directly influences a major life event, like graduation, professional licensure, or institutional funding, it officially crosses into high-stakes territory. Think of the bar exam for lawyers, board licensure for nurses, or civil service exams. These carry intense pressure because the evaluation made from that single measurement basically dictates a person's immediate career path.
Because the stakes are so incredibly high, we must neutrally acknowledge the extensive debate surrounding them in the educational community. As researcher Wayne Ah notes, while high-stakes tests powerfully promote accountability and establish clear standards, they can also lead to unintended consequences. Researchers point out they can narrow the curriculum, causing educators to strictly teach to the test, which sometimes stifles classroom creativity and can induce severe test anxiety for learners.
Finally, Section 5, Recent Trends and the Future of Assessment.
Thankfully, the landscape of testing is not static. We're moving toward computer-based and adaptive testing. This is where the test actually changes difficulty in real time based on your previous answers. Educational institutions are also increasingly embracing portfolio and performance assessments, alongside learning analytics and AI-assisted tools. These innovations are huge. They allow teachers to create much more personalized, authentic, and continuous evaluations of a student's actual capabilities.
The modern pedagogical consensus is clear. Effective educational assessment should combine multiple sources of evidence to provide a more complete understanding of student learning. The shift is decidedly toward comprehensive assessment systems. It's no longer just about that single measurement from one high-stakes Tuesday afternoon. It's about looking at the whole student across a variety of contexts over time.
And that brings us to our final thought. As education continues to evolve towards these comprehensive, multifaceted, and even AI-assisted assessments, how will we as a society redefine what it truly means to be a successful learner? If we're no longer just measuring the ability to recall facts on a standardized test, what new human skills will we value most? It leaves us with a fascinating thought about the future of learning, doesn't it? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.